Howdy of you delicious people. I'm here today to review a movie called Hustlers. So, I had watched a YouTube show called Actors on Actors where you would all of a sudden get to see two actors and they're kind of like talking to one another. They're asking certain things about certain projects that they had done. You can kind of tell a lot of times that these things are kind of scripted. Like, obviously, when you go through the Chris Evans, Paul Rudd one, you can obviously tell that there are bullet points that the people ask them to do. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like they came there with just like, oh, I just came here just to really have this conversation about this person's new project. No, someone is giving me questions to ask this person, and then vice versa, where like there's sometimes where people take too long to answer stuff, but that's perfectly fine because like I will listen to every minute of it because I enjoy that kind of stuff. You'll get uh, like Henry Cavill talking to Patrick Stewart, who's from like Star Trek Next Generation. You'll have who are other ones? You'll have Jennifer Lopez and Robert Pattinson talking together. You'll have any number of actors or whatever like talking about their projects. So I went into an episode of Actors on Actors where Robert Pattinson is talking about doing the movie Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe, but also talking about Batman. And so Jennifer Lopez is talking about this movie, Hustlers. And so you can obviously tell that Robert Pattinson did not come into this project well prepared. He's like, well, yeah, I know I was sent a link to watch this movie, but I just didn't. So it's like, well, like, okay, fine. Like, reasonably, I guess that makes sense that, like, Robert Pattinson would just be like, nah, I'm just, like, because you can kind of tell, like, there's a history of Robert Pattinson just kind of, you know what I mean. So, phoning it in. Oh, what was that? No, nothing. Anyways, so, but Jennifer Lopez was being very nice, very generous, and whatever. But going into this, so what is this movie about? Because I had like heard about it on actors. So like I decided to dip my way into this movie, and I realized that like, okay, like I can go into the territory of liking this movie up until a certain point. Like we got to some like retail stuff in here where like a lot of the uh, a lot of the actors were kind of forced to put together these whole like retail like scenes and whatever, which I'm like, okay, I think that's how you can really uh, like have the investment of the common person to like this film. But then eventually, like, it gets to the point where I kind of felt like the strip club moments were actually just kind of clickbaiting to have some content in the trailer. And then I also kind of felt like they were going so heavily on this whole, like, trick that they did, the whole heist thing that they accomplished. And man, did they go heavily in depth on that, where it feels like the whole entire movie, like even forget about the whole strip club thing, and then just turn right into just like, well, this is just a heist film, and that's gonna be what it is. And plus, also, this movie kind of jumps around a lot during certain time periods. Like 2007, 2014, 2008, 2013, 2015, somewhere around, like, pick a time period, people. Pick a time period. It would be great. Because this movie just bounces all over the place, like, for, like, a certain, like, 2 decades. And like I couldn't tell you the difference between any number of those times. Like they don't even use music to difference of time periods. Like there's no like, hey, we're gonna play this song from this time period, and oh, like, hey, we're gonna do no. Like they use like Janet Jackson music through most of this movie, which I'm like, well, that's probably very expensive to use, but like that doesn't mean that like I was just like how am I supposed to like tell between any of these time periods? Because obviously, I guess it just doesn't matter. It's like, hey, see a lot of good-looking women like half naked a little bit, which like that's not the whole reason why I enjoyed this movie or at some point liked this film or whatever. Like it was really just go like, okay, I want to see like what's the like I thought that this would get really creative like with them maybe robbing somebody, or I thought this was like a like robbery movie. That would have been cool. Just because like I think it's kind of a movie where like these girls are to make a lot of money, but that like isn't good enough because all of a sudden they're just like, well, I want a certain kind of lifestyle now, and then like that lifestyle just kind of eats the way at them to where it's just like, no, I want something bigger and bigger, and then it just like it gets where like it's just like people just turn on people and it gets crazy in this film. But then again, there just wasn't a good enough story in here. Like I would go and I would watch things like Coyote Ugly, and I would watch movies like the Demi Moore movie Striptease, and I would feel like I'm not missing out by not watching this movie and just going over to see those, because it feels like it's like one and the same kind of thing where you have New Girl who is to be trained in on how to lap dance people and dance and get on the pole and whatever, which pole dancing isn't hard to do. Go and check out like the Game Grumps or Markiplier or Jacksepticeye doing pole dancing. It's not that easy. But if anything, also, I'm sure a lot of the people that they used for the pole dancing were obviously people who were very well and trained for the most part through this movie. So, going into this, yeah, like there is a lot of hop, skipping, and jump around. So I think it's about time for us to go out of our way to say, let's go into spoiler time. I've talked too much for about this. Well, I'm teeing it up. So, New Girl comes into strip club, and like J-Lo's character, who is Ramona, starts training her around. All of a sudden, they decide, you know what, like we're really just not getting enough money out of our job. And so now we need to figure out a way to get the most money out of our job. But then all of a sudden we have like the stock market crash, and they're like, well, wait a minute, now we have to even like find even a much more harder or much more like like a what is the word? They have to come up with a criminal way, let's just say, to go and like get money from people, and then all of a sudden it just becomes a huge montaging scenes of just guys going like walking around like zombies, or like guys that are half asleep throughout a bulk of this film. And I'm like, wow, that's exciting. This is an exciting film. But then after that, we start to get people like starting to run off, run away, and just be like, dude, I'm freaking done with this. Because like we're getting to the territory of like all of a sudden there's like other branches of women trying to do the exact same thing, and all of a sudden also like it gets to the point where eventually like these women have basically stolen like a person's entire life savings, and then it just gets to the point of like, okay, now there needs to have these girls think to themselves, yeah, we should probably stop now, or maybe we should move to another state, like maybe we should go to like Mexico or whatever to avoid us ever getting arrested for whatever, and then just set things up there. But they just are like, no, like we're just going to keep going at this because we want to get caught at that point. Um, and so that's basically what happens for bulk of this film. So let's go into spoiler time because basically, if I haven't kind of like said what it is going on in this movie, anyways, so let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we do spoil this movie. So the very beginning of this is to start out in 2007, but we have Destiny who is doing a interview, I believe, in 2013. I believe. Let me check because I do 2014. So yeah, so the movie starts in 2017. Destiny is doing her interview with a woman in 2014 about all of this, and so Destiny is to be this new girl who is to be at this club, and so she goes into this club and is in the back room, kind of seeing all the girls and seeing someone with less than no clothes on. So the big, huge thing is to have Ramona come out, and Ramona is dancing on the pole and everything like that, and everybody's throwing huge chunks of money out there, like, yeah, like, this girl looks like Jennifer Lopez, yeah, throw money at her, because, like, she's the big star of this film, evidently. Throw all the money at her, because big star, and, like, we just have to be, like, so happy that Jennifer Lopez is here doing anything for this film. And so, like, it obviously feels like they threw out, like, the real, like, Jennifer Lopez's character was the big show of this entire movie. And, like, everyone else was just kind of like, they're just there. But, if anyways, there's just not enough strip club scenes in this movie. There really isn't. And that's just kind of a huge downer. But it's also just like, well, hey, we got enough for the trailer, so let's get out. So, what ends up happening is that Destiny and Ramona, Destiny is to eventually go out for a cigarette, and so Ramona is like, hey, where's your coat, Destiny? And Destiny's like, well, it's inside. And Ramona is just like, well, hey, I have my huge fur coat here because I'm a big, getter of money, let's just say. I'm a big getter of money. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So J-Lo is to comfort, or Ramona is to comfort Destiny in this big coat. And so Ramona is saying, like, hey, like, you should be, like, this, like, triple threat girl. Like, if anything, you got a lot of things going for you. Like, why aren't you killing it? And so she's like, well, because I'm new and I don't know the rung of things. And so Ramona's like, I'll teach you. Like, I'll get you the right clothes. I'll get you the right movie to be in. You're gonna be the lead role in this movie. I don't know why, but you will be, because if anything, like, a lot of the girls are just background, weirdly enough. But hey, like, when it gets to the point where Destiny's to have, like, emotional things going on, then I'm like, okay, I can buy that. So good for her. So both so Ramona and Destiny, like, Ramona is showing her the ropes, like, she's showing her how to work the pole, and I'm like, yeah, like, there is, like, that's gonna take a while to master, like, trying to, like, dance on the pole, because it's like, yeah, like, you gotta build up that leg strength, just because, yeah, like, I've seen some guys try to do it, and, like, if you have no leg strength, I don't have legs. I just have upper arm strength or upper body strength. I don't have leg strength. I never worked those. So yeah, it's like Like it's all in the legs, and like if you don't have some like really good legs, you're just gonna fall on your batukas, or you're just gonna look weird trying to accomplish this whole thing. But anyways, so Destiny tries it, and so like we have like Ramona that is like holding her up in the air. I'm like, no, we should not be doing that because I just don't want all of a sudden us to have like, yeah, like J Lo, she's down on the set. Like Destiny just fell on her. Sucks. But so all of a sudden we are to have eventually a girl stepping in named Diamond, who is Cardi B, who we eventually see her dancing at one point because we have to have like J-Lo dancing once and then Diamond dancing once. But then eventually Diamond is just going to be here at some point, but then she's going to quickly drop off and you're never going to see Cardi B through the rest of this movie because like at least they wanted again Cardi B to be there for the clickbaiting moment of this movie. Like that's a bulk of what this movie eventually ends up being is just a giant clickbaiting like thing to where even like things were coming out of the woodwork where it's like Oscar nominations and like let's give the award to these people, which I can understand that because like doing an entire movie like almost like half naked, like yeah, I guess that could garner like definitely going and like giving somebody an award because that's not an easy thing to do. But anyways, so I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just reviewing this movie. So Diamond is to eventually teach is to teach Destiny a lap dance, and so like we have Destiny who's giving like this kind of like cardboardingly dance, and so Diamond is just like, "You're not even looking at me. You're not even looking during." Like I don't. I'm everywhere, so that's okay. So Diamond is to eventually sit on Ramona's lap and just kind of like slowly grind a tiny bit, and because they're like, yeah, you gotta work that wang, you gotta work it, you gotta work that wang, you gotta work it. And so like that transitions us to be on like, yeah, we did enough of that like strip clubbing thing. Let's get to the real reason why we're here, the heist or the consistent stealing from guys and whatever. Because what ends up happening is that like both Destiny and both Ramona are to tag team uh into like every man to like basically get the high rollers to just throw their money out like it's nobody's business. But here's the thing. So what ends up happening consistently is Ramona is to just kind of be there, like taking the clothes off of Destiny. And so Destiny is to be really like doing the work, where Ramona is just like the teaser and whatever. And then the guys just, whew, throw my money. And I'm like, so you're there for two women, but only really just for one? But hey, like if they sell it well, then by golly, like whatever. Like hey, if it's sold right, then like cuz like a lot of people like false advertisement, two women, one thing, whatever, whatever. Anyways, so we push on to supposedly Destiny and Ramona making a killing, and so all of a sudden we head to 2008 where all of a sudden and these girls were really working all these like stockbrokers. They were trying to find most of the time like married men and all kinds of things. They were trying to like figure out like the best way to work these guys. So all of a sudden the stockbroker bracket, like it completely like stopped, it completely failed, it completely whatever broke, however you want to say it. The stock market fell, and so There we go. That's where I was going with. And so all of a sudden, you just have the dancers that had so many big head honchos of people all fired or all just left the stock market because they're like, I'm going to take my money and run. And so all of a sudden, the girls are just like, oh no, money not coming in. Shouldn't you have, like, I, like, when, like, for these girls, it just seems like they should have had like some kind of cap somewhere, and then like, okay, like I'm gonna stop here and like and just be done. Where it feels like these girls never like had that thing where it's just like, no, like I'm just gonna like I just wanna like just buy an entire house and like buy a brand new car with one payment, and I just want to like be a millionaire but still just keep getting money in. And so when all of a sudden money is stopping to come, it's like, well, we need more money, new money, we greedy, we've already had a lifestyle set up for ourselves. Like, I don't want to make this comparison because it sounds awful. Like a lot of people kind of said when like Dave Batista was to supposedly like leave WWE, that a lot of people said it's like, oh well, like he'll come back because he has a lifestyle and whatever. And I'm like, no, like obviously you don't know he's making big, huge, gigantic things of a movie. Like freaking Avengers Endgame and up, like freaking like these things are gonna be some huge freaking paydays, and like Dave is doing a ton of these kinds of movies, and so like that just leaves him to be able to make more of said movies, because he had left wrestling, and plus also like he went back into a lot of wrestling times hurt, but whatever. But so people like, so I'll make that comparison that these women just have a lifestyle that they're accustomed to and they don't want to give that up. And so that's what basically like pushes these girls to do something criminal. And so what they end up doing is that they decide, well, like we're going to go in and like find these married guys that are at these places, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna like take them to these strip clubs and have them already be like drugged up and like basically like get a very high amount of their credit cards to almost just kind of wipe them out and then send them on their way to uh to eventually just like live with the aftermath of their mistake. And so all of a sudden they do that for a pretty good while, where you just see guys coming in like they're being dragged into these strip clubs by these women, and like so you consistently just keep seeing that where that continues to happen. And so all of a sudden you start to see some of these women like start to even just max out these guys' credit cards, meaning just like, hey, like, what is the absolute limit? Let's push it to that kind of thing. And so all of a sudden, I believe we get to 2013, where all of a sudden we start seeing like Destiny and Ramona, who are starting to see that there are copycats going on that are doing the exact same things that they're doing. But here's also where the Breaking Bad moment comes in. So both Destiny and Ramona are trying to figure out like what is the best way to deliver these kinds of drugs. Like they're trying to see how they can cook it, or how they can like change it, or how they can like do whatever things with it to try and adjust these drugs to make it easier or simpler or whatever. And so you just see this sequence where both of these people are just kind of like, no. They're like testing their own merchandise to see like how effective it can be. And I'm just like, you're gonna die that way. Like, but So they go into this Breaking Bad sequence, bizarrely, but they figure out how to perfect the drug. And so now we go on to having these girls eventually realize, you know what, like, I am just, like, tired of doing this whole strip club scene. I am just gonna, like, basically just try to take these guys, like, credit card information and get to wipe them out that way. And so that's where you start to see, like, these girls all trying to get, like, this credit card information from all these guys, like, take them to some club somewhere and, like, whisper, like, what's your mother's maiden name? What's your social security card number? Or what's this? What's that? What's like any secret code, whatever that they can come up with? What was your first high school? Like, and like, so these guys are out of it and they're like, huh, what? Like, we see one guy who ends up going through like a glass table. He falls over onto a glass table, and the girls are just like, I think we should get out of here. So, so like, these guys are so drugged out of their gourds, and like giving these girls his credit card, not knowing like any better. And so all of a sudden these girls just basically start to eventually get to these certain guys that all of a sudden like are like these important guys. Like, there's some guy named Doug who we find out that he had a very like tragic story, that like his house burnt down and like his wife left him and all this other stuff. And so, and that his like son is like maybe autistic or whatever. So I don't know. I believe that's what he ended up saying. But like, anyway, so these girls are to eventually take this guy and go on and do the same thing to him. And so all of a sudden, we had this guy calling this girl, and like we just have J Lo just saying like, "Give me the phone," because eventually Ramona just like takes the phone from somebody and it's like, "You know what? Like, we're not just gonna listen to their sob stories anymore. Like, if anything, we're not gonna do anything. Like if we wouldn't do it, someone else will. Someone else will steal from him, and like it's just a thing that's happened." So, but I also kind of forgot that eventually all of these girls are to also, like, they work at the strip club, but then eventually they are also just kind of forced to work in retail, where eventually you start to see the same old kind of retail scenarios where like some guy is mentioning that he can't work with their schedule, which leads like Ramona to just be like, you know what, I'm freaking done working here, kind of thing, where it's just like, but I need to help out I need to pick up my girl at X amount of time. And like J-Lo is saying like, this girl can probably take my shift and so it'll be fine. And this manager's like, no, no, you know how hard it is to work a schedule and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like that moment to me was just like so cringe, because a lot of times you would go into retail and it would be the different scenario where like managers couldn't, like, they'll say like, you know how hard it is to do a schedule, as they're cutting your hours. Yeah, so that happens. So it's not their fault. Supposedly it's just like, yeah, we just don't have the money in the budget to afford, like, then let people go. Let people go. Have to forcibly let people go. Like, just don't like put one person on for like one whole shift that's like 4 hours and an entire week. Just let them go. Like, oh, but they work so well. Then give them more hours and cut someone else. Cut someone else who isn't productive. Like, let them go. Well, like, we can have a. So you're just like, you're gonna have them like out of the whole entire year, like 3 months out of the real year, they're actually gonna get hours. But anything beyond that, they're just gonna get like, hey, here's a 4 hour shift here. Great. So but like to each their own. So I'm doing a lot of side stuff here. I apologize, but anyways, so uh, but yeah, so I can see the desperation of these characters, but eventually, like once it seems like they are above and beyond, like they're giving people like Christmas presents that are high end like stuff, and it's just like you would have thought they would have cut and run at some point, but they're just like, no, like we are just never gonna get caught, kind of thing. We are just never going to we're gonna steal everyone's life savings and run off with it, and like we're never gonna get caught. Because even the police officers that are to do this investigation are to say, like, yeah, like it's crazy how these guys just will not uh go and call this in, because like a lot of these girls are just like had worked these guys over, and the guys are just like, yeah, I can't just say that I was worked over by these like these dancers, like I just can't. And so like nobody wanted to come out and say it, and so all of a sudden it's just like the perfect crime. So but eventually, we had the guy who is to be of Doug, and so eventually Doug was to be the first one to come and say something, and he eventually is to have a recording on a girl named Dawn, and because Ramona, there we go. Ramona is to have a girl named Dawn who Ramona had a lot of faith in, and she's like, yeah, yeah, so what? She's like she does have a past, but if anything, she'll easily work with us, because it gets to the point where eventually these girls start bailing out. We have like Mercedes that eventually is to run off when things get a little like sketchy, because there's at one point where one guy is to uh be hanging out with Mercedes, and he jumps off his roof to jump in the pool, and he misses the pool and smacks into the concrete. And so now they're like rushing him to the hospital. Mercedes just runs off to the street because she's like, you know what? I'm not going to grab this guy in or drag this guy into this hospital. It's just not happening. So, like, Mercedes did this, but she didn't want to deal with it, so she just ran off. And so, like, eventually like Destiny had to also like bring her daughter to school, and but also having to deal with that like really hard night. So eventually it just gets to the point where uh eventually Destiny is doing like some job, and she eventually like falls asleep, and she falls asleep and wakes up in her car to eventually find out that every single person in the car had like bailed on her during this whole thing. And so Destiny is now like grabbing onto the steering wheel and trying to avoid not to get into a car accident. And I'm like, man, this is kind of getting crazy. So, but yeah, because they like work themselves so hard. And so Destiny is doing this whole interview with this woman named Elizabeth to get this whole story out there. And but also Destiny's consistently telling Elizabeth, it's like, well, you don't know how hard it is. You don't know how hard it is to get money. And you don't know how hard like we worked for like what we had to do. And like a lot of sympathy is to be had with these characters, which I can understand that, because like really there's a lot of people like kind of like how like Ramona kind of summarized this in this movie, that like everybody is trying to hustle and everyone is trying to eventually be like Ramona. Like everyone is going to eventually be a dancer at some point. And so so we're all kind of in some way like just like Ramona, and how we all have to really try to hustle to get our whatever, whether it be like a view or a like or whatever. But hustle, yeah, hustle, yeah, hustle. Anyways, so uh, but yeah, so it ends up that we like they eventually go too big for this whole thing. Like it gets to the point where like Ramona and Destiny are now like setting up a franchise for this whole thing. They're getting like other girls to be involved in this, and like they're having like the like two groups kind of doing it, and that's when everything is gonna just just be just like like. But anyways, so they start to trust people that they probably shouldn't have, and what ends up finally happening is guys start coming in and saying like, well, hey, like I'm gonna do this so that way maybe these girls will stop. So like the architect that was kind of like throwing himself completely at Annabelle, which was kind of like a horrible thing to do. Like he was just like, "Hey, let's go and f in the bathroom," and Annabelle is like, "No, like I'm just waiting for my other girls here." Like this guy evidently was like really handsy. So, so yeah, so eventually Dawn is to eventually be wired and to try to pull a sting operation on both Destiny and Ramona, but like even that, like nothing really exactly happens from that. I don't like, I guess the sting operation, they couldn't exactly come up with real hard evidence that both Destiny or Ramona did anything, because if anything, kind of Dawn put the drugs in the drink to give to this guy, and so like I guess there was nothing to really like, there's no like hard evidence that said both Destiny or Ramona was doing anything. And so sting operation didn't work. But so all of a sudden, guys started coming forward, and all of a sudden, the girls started to get arrested. And so what ends up happening is the girls end up getting arrested. And so now we start to have it where, like, somebody's gonna have to confess out of all these people, because if anything, a lot of these girls were not really all that trusting of any one of them, anyways. Even though like they were to get some magnanimous Christmas presents from any number of any of these girls, but that isn't enough to just like, dude, I'm gonna freaking drop a dime on you, kind of thing. Like I don't care. Like if you gave me Louis Vuitton's shoes for Christmas, like I'm going to roll over on you. So because we had that whole Christmas moment where uh like uh like little girls were getting these like Whamadine presents from either Ramona or Destiny's kids. Uh, some of the other girls were getting like these lavish gifts from any number of these people, so on and so forth. So and like we also find out that Destiny's mother danced one time with Frankie Valli. That was great. Uh, but sadly enough, we also have like Destiny like has really one bad day. Like especially after she was to eventually bring her kid to school. All of a sudden, like Destiny is to go to her mom's house to find out that her mother died. And so Destiny now has to take her mother to the funeral. And so like Destiny's at this funeral, and like Ramona is just like kind of like comforting her, but it's also just like this awkward comforting where uh like I'm just like, man, like Ramona has just kind of changed. She's really just changed at this point to be a different person. And so you just start to see like Destiny and like Ramona like having this like rift where Ramona is just tearing apart every person's life to where there is not going to be another client that is going to keep these women afloat. And Ramona just doesn't care. She's just taking everything from everyone. And so, but they eventually get caught. They all go and eventually have the cops coming for them. One of the girls was to come out of prison to have seen her husband, and while she was to make her way out of this prison, she was going to go right into the cops' arms or hands or whatever to be arrested. I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy. So all of a sudden all the girls get arrested. We have Annabella or Annabelle Annabelle who eventually vomits while getting arrested. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like you're gonna vomit through this entire film. So like numerous times that she's yakking it up. So all the girls eventually get arrested. All like J Lo is like taking money out of the ATM to get arrested. Uh and so basically after they all go into prison. Eventually, we have Destiny, who is to have taken a plea bargain because of her daughter. And so all these girls eventually get arrested, and Destiny tells Ramona that she did the plea bargain. And so Ramona is just like, man, we were hurricanes once. And so they all did their time, and like most of their time was kind of like done via probation, and I'm like, holy crap! So like they probably didn't spend much time in like actual hard prison, but like I guess since nobody really came forward enough, like I guess it was just like here's just a slap on the wrist kind of thing. So like who knows how much money they actually got like in real dollars and cents. Like it would have been cool to like, yeah, they stole over 20 million things of money, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, then why did they keep going? They kept like setting up franchises and whatever. That was a mistake. So they were arrested seemingly for months for some people. And so anyways, after that, we get to where really just Destiny is like doing this whole tell all story to this woman. And so we also get really Elizabeth going through and like asking statements from another of other people to get this whole story out there. And the very last statement she goes to is Ramona herself to get that whole statement about like everybody is a dancer and everybody's going to work for their money and whatever. Like it seems that Ramona goes back into, I guess, retail because that seems like what she ended up like she's ending up doing at the end of this movie. So like yeah, so like this is a very interesting movie. In a roundabout way I reviewed it, but I also just kind of quickly like skimmed a lot because I'm just like, who knows if this movie is going to be whatever it is. Like I just decided to just put this out there. I also didn't go into the thorough way of reviewing in heavily detail like I probably would others. So go ahead and check any other movie out without a doubt that I have done. Thank you for watching this, but I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.